Money. Money is the source of much anxiety, much confusion, a great deal of suffering.
Money makes the world go round. That's the one that everybody knows.
Money is a tool to help people live a better quality of life. But somehow it's become the all in all. People think that money is life in itself.
The standard view is that if you get richer, you get better off and you're happier. Well, it turns out not to be true. People's absolute standard of living, once they're above poverty, is pretty weakly related to happiness.
I'm going to make a rough claim that about 95% of family feuds, problems, breakdowns, are about money. And I'm probably conservative.
In America, to have $1 million means that you're successful. I mean, but what does that really mean?
Why is that? What's so special about money? Why do we deal about money as basically the breakdown in the family? Why is it so frequent?
Our relationship with money is so troubled and so upsetting, and it is not just for people who are trying to make ends meet or who feel marginalized, but even our global billionaires are completely freaked out about money all the time. So having more money doesn't really resolve these problems we have around money.
Understanding the dollar. That means more than knowing what a dollar bill looks like or what a silver dollar is.
For the first time, essentially the entire world, willing or not, subscribes to the same set of economic rules.
The money system went global, and it began to disorder every local ecosystem and every local social system on the planet.
At the bottom of all the rules is the rule that making money is always more important than anything else.
We've made money more important than human life, more important than the natural world, more important than God or spirit. And on that really bed of lies, our relationship with money is resting.
This is where we are today, is that the entire apparatus of assumptions underlying economics are simply wrong. So, why do we allow societies to be run with this malfunctioning source code?
Part of the difficulty is that very few people think about what money is, where it comes from, how it is created, and how it is controlled.
Well, remember, there has been 150 years of very intense propaganda and indoctrination to try to drive these ideas out of people's heads.
If we could unpack all of this mystification, we'd probably find that economics was made so complicated in order to mystify people, so they could not really figure it all out.
If everybody knew the full facts about how money is issued, how it's put into circulation, who is issuing it, how they have power and control over the economy and over individuals' lives, I think there'd be a lot of very unhappy people around.
It's often been said that money moves the world, or money is the engine of the world, or money makes the world go round. But in more accuracy, money stops the world from going.
I'm afraid that's more than I care to spend.
Money doesn't facilitate. In its current form, it inhibits transaction and trading.
Money is the one thing that is required for economic exchange. It is the Khyber Pass, if you will. It's the channel through which every transaction must go in order to be completed. We live today by exchanging goods and services with one another, and money is the medium that we use to do that. So money actually becomes the controlling element in economics. Those who control money control everything.
Out of the simple barter of primitive people, spearheads became one of the first articles used as money. Shells have also served as money. Wampum was used by the American Indians. And hundreds of other articles have been money to various people at various times.
Money is not a creature of the state. It didn't require any king or prince to invent money. Rather, money and monetary trade were products of spontaneous order.
If you try and find out what people think money is, you will be mystified and amazed. It's a confusion. It's inaccurate. It's absurd. It's superstition. It's myth. It's religious. It's crazy. Most people haven't an idea. They just use it. Perhaps it'd be more accurate to say it uses them.
In fact, it's impossible for the human mind to grasp the total amount of money that has been required to build the America we know today. Where then does all this money come from? Now we're getting to the point that is news.
Most people have no idea where money comes from. A lot of people believe that it's the governments that create the money.
I'm not sure of the exact authority under which more money is released. I know the executive has some power over it. As long as when I cash my paycheck, it's there. That's all I'm really worried about anymore.
It comes from a big factory.
Okay.
They make it?
It's, I don't know, created by the government to control us.
Well, it'd have to be done by the government. I mean, that's what you would expect anyways. Whether or not it really is the government is a different story altogether.
Conventional money is not created by the government, as many people believe, and is not even created by the central banks. Well, do they do part of it? But it is actually created by the banking system.
People see these films about the U.S. Mint and the government printing office, and they see these sheets of dollar bills being run off the printing presses. And so they think it's the government that's printing money. But this is not the real source of money. The real source of money is banks.
The banks have a complete monopoly on the money creation process. So the public are not actually involved in it at all, directly or indirectly.
The Federal Reserve is a private institution owned by commercial banks who are members of the Federal Reserve System, which includes all the nationally chartered banks.
Most people don't realize that the Federal Reserve is a private corporation and is for profit. And in fact, Federal Reserve, it's neither federal and it's not a reserve. Money is issued whenever someone takes out a loan from the bank. So if I walk into a bank and I want to borrow $500,000 to start a business, and I've got a good business plan and I've got customers, then the bank, assuming they agree, will give me $500,000 to start my business.
There is your money, and this is your payment book.
Thank you.
Now, most people, if you ask them, will say, well, that $500,000 comes from somewhere else. It comes from someone else's savings. It comes from investments. That's actually not true. When I say money is issued as debt, I mean they don't get that money from anywhere. They actually create it out of thin air and create a credit in my bank account, and poof, there it is.
John Kenneth Galbraith, in his book Money, Whence It Came, Where It Went, says this. He says, "The process by which money is created is so simple that the mind is repelled." And it's true. When I tell people how money is created by banks simply by making ledger entries, they just can't believe it.
The private banking system literally creates our money out of nothing and loads it into the economy. The only way new money can get into the economy and ultimately your pocket is via a bank loan. This means that every dollar you have ever seen is someone's debt to a bank.
The simple fact is, and it's an uncomfortable fact for many people to realize, that if all the debts were repaid, then all the money supply would simply disappear. There would be no money. And that would mean a complete and total collapse of the economy.
If everybody were to reimburse their debts, if that were possible, that everybody does reimburse their debts, there wouldn't be any money left. In fact, there's more debt than money available. And the reason is that interest is not created.
The catch is that they want more repaid than what they've given me.
When you go to a bank and borrow $100,000 to buy a house, they will check whether you are good credit, and then they will decide to create the money entering it electronically in your account, and say you have to bring back $200,000 in the next 20 years. The $100,000 of the first loan is created. The second one, the interest rate, is not created. So they send you in the world, compete with everybody else to bring in the second $100,000. That's how the money is kept scarce. It is through the competition between the different players for interest that is not created. So there's always less money than is necessary. Okay? And it's done systemically.
If you go to a bank and you borrow money into circulation, if the bank decides to approve your loan application, they will make two entries on their books. One is they will take your note, let's say it's a mortgage note, and that will be an asset on the books of the bank, and they will offset that with an equal deposit to your account, which is a liability on the books of the bank. So the money creation process is as simple as that. But the bank does not create the interest that you're going to have to pay year by year by year until this mortgage loan matures. So where does that interest come from?
Where does the interest come from? I have to find that.
Well, it has to come from some other loan that was made to someone else. So you have this inherent deficiency in the money supply. Not everyone can repay what they owe to the banks. At any given time, there is more owed to the banks than exists in circulation.
Which means, inevitably, someone is going to lose the game. Someone is going to go bankrupt, and that has nothing whatsoever to do with the quality of the goods and services or the efficiency of the business. Nothing at all.
Everybody in the economy is vying with everyone else to avoid defaulting on their loans to the banks. And the only way they can do that is by competing with one another for an inadequate supply. So it's like a game of musical chairs. It assures that there must be some losers, regardless of how competent they are in conducting their business.
The money we get when we receive a loan is called principal. Our debt, however, is not discharged when we repay the principal. Bank loans are all made on the condition that people pay both the principal and the interest the bank charges. However, money can only be issued as principal. No one creates the interest, so the amount of debt owed is actually far greater than the amount of money there is to repay it. When a dollar is loaned into the economy, it begins a loop. Joe the farmer gets a loan from the bank and pays Tom for fixing his tractor. Tom pays Jane for bread at the local bakery, and Jane in turn buys the wheat from Joe, who can now repay the loan. The problem is, Joe owes the bank interest on top of the principal. In order to avoid losing his property to the bank, Joe must go find other money making its own loop in the economy. He can now repay his loan with the interest, but the people in that loop are left without their money. They still need money to facilitate their exchanges and to repay the loan that issued the money they had been using. The only place they can get it is from other such debt loops. Since all money has an interest price tag attached, there will never be enough money to repay all the debt owed to banks. Therefore, some people will always have to go bankrupt or have their property repossessed by the bank.
It's crazy. Sometimes it worries me because, what if there was like a collective understanding about how phony the money is when it comes down to it? What would people do? Would they riot in the streets?
Who's propagating the illusion behind the money? That just pisses me off, actually.